We are here today to talk about the life of Rebecca Brown, a Chinese girl who has an LGBTQ plus background. Hi Rebecca, how are you doing today?
Me too. Hi, I'm doing great. I'm really excited to talk a little bit about my background and how it relates to gender in China, especially in the LGBTQ plus community.
Fantastic. Would you mind telling me a little bit about yourself?
I'm 20 years old and I grew up in Beijing. My parents both have very traditional backgrounds, and at the beginning, they were not supportive of my sexual orientation. I identify as a lesbian. Growing up in the 21st century, I have been more fortunate than people who are older than me. I'm at an age where people are starting to accept the LGBTQ plus community. I have moved to Australia as I feel as I can be more myself here without constraints from social norms and values.
Wow, what a brave move. When you say that the social norm is not as accepting in China when compared to Australia, what do you mean?
The Ming Dynasty in China was very open to exploring the ideas of sensual love, and there were no constraints on one's sexual or gender preferences. However, in the more recent times, this idea has radically changed. The Maoist era had huge influences over society in relation to expression and the subject of sex, where most topics were taboo. The traditional mindset was focused on raising offspring and starting a family. My parents wanted me to continue the bloodline. A term we use is Xinhun, but since I'm a homosexual, I cannot do this, and thus I'm frowned upon. The one-child policy implemented by the government placed more pressure on me, as I am an only child and my bloodline now stops with me.
Ah, yes, I have heard about this. The pressure of the Tongqi and the Tongfu. Gay men and women have an expectation to uphold, and I have heard that it is more common in China for these men and women to go into a marriage with a heterosexual of the opposite gender just to fulfill the wishes of their parents.
Exactly. There was a time where I wanted to please my parents and I had the plan for the future to marry a Tongfu man. However, I moved to Australia and my eyes were opened by the diversity and the social norm of being out in the LGBTQ plus community. Chinese culture doesn't directly block the administration of the LGBTQ plus people in the media, but there is definitely a lacking of understanding. The censorship of Chinese social media sites has really upset me because I was not able to connect with people who I could relate to in terms of homosexuality. I never felt any sense of belonging in China, as I was not supported by people in my personal life.
I think the world is moving forward, but gender in China has been a topic that has been taboo for years. With the restricted internet viewing, I feel as if the idealisms and the social norms will remain in place years after the rest of the world has moved forward. The PRC doesn't criminalize the idea of homosexuality, but there is no protection on gendered issues. What are your thoughts on that?
But too. I'm appalled that the government has not done more for the LGBTQ plus community. In the recent years, there was a hashtag that floated around the Chinese internet, but it was quickly censored as being gay may be legal, but it is not conventionally accepted by the Chinese society or government. I've seen shops being shut down for selling rainbow flags and movies being censored for having gay scenes. The stigma of homosexuality is still extremely relevant in today's society, as it was only deemed to not be a mental illness only 19 years ago.
Yes, definitely. There's a huge stigma that surrounds the LGBTQ community. Chinese society works as a collective. Joanne M. said, "Gendered pronouns are a reminder of how deeply we invest everyday language and life within constant references to gender." China is definitely in a position where they need to catch up with the West in terms of gender and move out of the mindset of having the LGBTQ plus community as a minority.
I think one thing that really helped me a lot growing up surrounded by this stigma was the introduction of Jin Xing in Chinese media. She is a transsexual star of dance. She taught me that it was okay to be different and not to let people judge you to the normal standards or presume the right to dictate how you lead your personal life. There was only ever a handful of celebrities in the media who were of the LGBTQ plus community, but they showed me that it was okay to be me. They were the starting blocks of people starting to accept the community, even with the PRC only talking about human rights on their own terms.
I love Jin Shang. She's gorgeous. There are small elements in gender in China which are moving forward. Which event was pivotal to you?
That is important to me is the Beijing Queer Film Festival, as the laws have censorship over these kinds of movies and they are commonly only found in the black market. I really enjoy going to a festival where I can see that my ideas and sexual orientation is normal. Nowadays, social media is an outlet of support for those exploring their sexuality, and without this form of communication in China, these individuals, especially children, will suffer. Gave an individual the will to continue to live, for a lot of children, is the only way to find people like themselves.
I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for coming in to talk about gender in China, specifically the LGBTQ plus community. I now have a huge respect and understanding for you and the community after hearing about what you have achieved in the last 50 years.